Hello, my name is Ashley Evans. I'm a master's student in Dr. James Kane's lab at New Mexico State University, and my thesis research is focused on the effects of human recreation on desert bighorn sheep in the Dominguez-Escalante National Conservation Area located in western Colorado. So to give you a little bit of background for how this project came about, a few years ago, a local mountain biking group proposed building approximately 40 miles of new trails in the Escalante Triangle Recreational Management Zone. Concerns were raised about the impact of increased recreational usage on desert bighorn, as well as the federally threatened Colorado hookless cactus that is endemic to the area. As such, the trail building project is currently on hold, which presents a really unique opportunity to collect baseline data before a change is implemented, rather than resorting to reactive monitoring and management, as is so often the case in wildland and wildlife management. Recreation is increasing, and it's not a concern that's unique to the Dominguez-Escalante. Between 1999 and 2009, the number of people participating in nature-based outdoor recreation activities on public lands in the U.S. increased by 7%. During that same 10-year period, participation in OHV use increased 35%, which is more than any other form of terrestrial recreation. Viewing and photography of nature also experienced dramatic increases in participation, between 18 and 30%, depending on what exactly is being viewed or photographed. Recreation in wildlands can have a wide range of impacts, including impacts on wildlands themselves. Heavy recreational usage can result in trampled vegetation, soil compaction, litter and feces scattered along trails, as well as facilitate the spread of invasive species, among a myriad of other impacts. Recreation can impact wildlife. Many animals view humans as predators and react accordingly to seeing them on the landscape. In areas with recreational disturbance, it's not uncommon to see altered behavioral patterns, such as a trade-off of foraging time for vigilance behaviors, flight responses away from humans, or even avoidance of heavily disturbed habitats. While animals are capable of habituating to human presence or human use under some conditions, this isn't always the case. Finally, recreation can impact the quality of the recreational experience. Wildlife-dependent recreation, which can be consumptive, such as harvest, or non-consumptive, such as viewing or photography, is motivated by the presence of wildlife on the landscape. So if there are more people on the landscape, it means there's less opportunity to view wildlife, which degrades the recreational experience. Even for activities that are not wildlife-dependent, experiencing nature is a major motivation for wildland recreation. And if there are more people, there are more trails and facilities built and utilized. There's more degradation and less natural character to enjoy, which negatively influences the recreational experience. My study area is the Dominguez-Escalante National Conservation Area, managed by Bureau of Land Management. The region boasts 4 river access points to the Gunnison River, hundreds of kilometers of hiking trails and OHV roads, and 2 developed campgrounds. Recreational opportunities here include OHV use, mountain biking, hiking, horseback riding, backpacking, kayaking, and rafting. Like so many of the public lands in the U.S., it is experiencing more recreation every year. In 2020, there was an 18% increase in the number of visitors and a 72% increase in the number of visitor days that were spent there. Such a dramatic increase is largely attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic and people staying closer to home, but there's been increasing recreational trends here for years, likely caused by the growing population of Colorado, many of whom are moving to enjoy the unique recreational activities and experiences that Colorado has to offer. There are distinct subherds of desert bighorn in the study area, each exposed to differing recreational types and intensities in different seasons. So the objectives of my thesis are to determine the influence of varying recreational types and intensities on desert bighorn, activity budgets and foraging efficiency, seasonal stress hormone levels, seasonal home range size, daily displacement distance, and total movement rates, resource selection and space use, and finally, demographic rates. There aren't well-established methods for quantifying recreation at fine scales using game cameras. Therefore, we'll be attempting to do this with my thesis research. We will be monitoring recreation using trail cameras and trail counters located at trailheads, at fixed intervals along trail intersections, as well as at points of interest. And we will use this data to create a gradient of utilization intensity along the length of trails. We will also be categorizing the recreation by type, including pedestrian, horseback, bicycle, and OHV use. In December 2020, we collared 30 adult females. Each female was fitted with a GPS collar providing 2-hour interval fixes, and each was marked with a unique combination of ear tags to make them individually identifiable. Our behavioral observations will be sampled across style and seasonal periods. We will be using instantaneous scan sampling to collect data to calculate activity budgets, and focal animal sampling to collect data for foraging efficiency. Our indices of foraging efficiency will be accepted food abundance, which is the amount of time it takes an individual to take 50 steps while foraging, and the food ingestion rate, which is the proportion of time spent feeding during that feeding bout of 50 steps. Behaviors recorded during the sampling periods, including foraging behaviors such as grazing or browsing, vigilance behaviors, multitasking behaviors in which an animal is simultaneously foraging and vigilant, likely to mitigate the cost of increased vigilance, as well as traveling, bedded, and other behaviors. We will be measuring seasonal stress hormone levels using fecal glucocorticoid metabolites. Glucocorticoid levels are indicators of physiological stress, and collecting fecal samples is a non-invasive method of measuring physiological stress regularly over time without introducing capture-related increase in glucocorticoid levels. We'll be collecting pellets seasonally from adult females from each subherd, and we will average those pellets across subherd to eliminate the individual variation introduced by differences in reproductive condition, diet, age, body condition, among many others. We'll be processing the samples using radioimmunoassays. And so far, this has proven to be the most difficult component of fieldwork, as the pellets need to be collected when they are extremely fresh, and the sheep are much more capable of negotiating the steep cliffs and treacherous terrain than we are. We'll be using the GPS collar data to calculate different movement parameters, including seasonal home range size, daily displacement distances, and movement rates, among others. And we'll also use the GPS data to determine bighorn habitat use with resource selection functions. We will be modeling habitat selection across landscape and home range spatial scales, as well as seasonal and diel temporal scales. Our covariates will include the typical covariates for bighorn, slope, terrain roughness, forage quality, distance to water, as well as distance to human recreational corridors, and type and intensity of recreational disturbance. In order to determine important vital rates for each subherd, we will be monitoring pregnancy rates. For the first year of our study, we are using pregnancy-specific protein B assays from capture to determine pregnancy rates. In December, we had 90% pregnancy rate, including 100% pregnancy rate in the 2 yearling females that were captured. During the second year, we will be using GPS cluster analysis to identify parturition events and then ground truth them to confirm they occurred. We'll measure recruitment using lamb survival. We will make observations of maternal care, so the lamb nursing, to track lamb survival until weaning for the lambs of our known marked individuals. Apparent lamb survival for each subherd will be estimated using the Lucas-Young survival from marked adults model. Adult survival will be monitored for our marked individuals, and we will calculate adult female survival for each subherd using known fate models. As for the implications of our study, if we see alterations in behavior, this could impose trade-offs between vigilance and foraging, which could result in energy deficit for our individuals. Chronic physiological stress can have deleterious effects, including reducing reproductive output, reducing survival rates, or making animals more susceptible to disease, which is a concern because these subherds are overlapped by seasonal grazing allotments of domestic sheep. Therefore, bighorn are exposed to Mycoplasma ova pneumoniae regularly. Greater movement rates could have great energetic costs, and as habitat specialists, desert bighorn habitat availability is relatively limited. Therefore, avoidance of recreational corridors or disturbance could reduce the amount of available habitat. And finally, all these can have population effects, potentially slowing population growth, reducing population abundance. Changes in these important demographic rates could cause low resilience in the face of change, whether that be climate change, introduction to a novel strain of MOV, or environmental variability. So I really see this as a valuable opportunity to determine the baseline state and to continue monitoring efforts after this potential change is implemented. And the results of this study will be used to inform how the land, the wildlife, and the people are managed. Finally, I really hope to educate the public about the impact of their actions, because recreational activities, especially hiking and other non-consumptive activities, are often perceived to be benign when they can actually have serious impacts on individual animals or entire populations, which is a growing concern as more people take to the outdoors. My fieldwork began in January of this year and will continue until December of 2022. I look forward to sharing my results. I would like to thank my collaborators, especially Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, and Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, without whom this project would not be possible. And finally, I would like to close by thanking you for attending my presentation, and I will now happily answer any questions.